What we're seeing today is what I call turnkey totalitarianism. They are putting in place all of these technological mechanisms for control we've never seen before. It's been the ambition of every totalitarian state from the beginning of mankind to control every aspect of behavior, of conduct, of thought, and to obliterate dissent. None of them have been able to do it. They didn't have the technological capacity. Today, the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide. Within 5 years, we're going to see 415,000 low orbit satellites. Bill Gates says his 65,000 satellites alone will be able to look at every square inch of the planet 24 hours a day. Digital currency that will allow them to punish us from a distance and cut off our food supply. Every right that you have is transformed into a privilege contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates. It will make you a slave. And what do we do about this? What do? We resist. I'm going to tell you 3 rules that you all need to know and memorize. Number 1, every power that government takes from us, it will never relinquish voluntarily. Number 2, every power they take from us, they will ultimately abuse to the maximum extent possible. Number 3, nobody in history of the planet has ever complied their way out of totalitarian control. Every capitulation is a signal to the oppressors to impose new forms of torment or torture or compliance or obedience. Every time you comply, you get weaker. Bullies cannot be appeased. It just encourages them to new forms of torture and torment. Every time you say yes, you're getting pushed back to a weaker position. That's why we need to resist today.
Yep. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Burn the Corporate Fiction. That was good old Bobby Kennedy. No, he's not one of the good billionaires that are going to save you from the evil billionaires and none of that stuff. This was probably manufacturing consent. They have to tell us what they're going to do before they do it. So if old Bobby Kennedy was allowed to get up there and tell you about their master plan, this is the ultimate end of everything that they're doing, is digital enslavement with AI governance, digital currency. So like he said, they can just shut it off from a distance. They can force you into compliance with the stroke of a key, right? Shut off your bank account, not let you purchase certain types of food, not let you travel certain places. So if they allowed him to tell us the plan, that's because he's the one they chose to deliver the revelation of the method, which is a big principle of Satanism. So anyways, welcome everyone to Burn the Corporate Fiction. This is our pilot stream on Facebook, which is pretty cool. The channel's been getting pretty large over there on Facebook, so I figured why not start live streaming to Facebook as opposed to X. That always shadow bans me anyways, because good old Elon Musk, his CEO, says freedom of speech but not freedom of reach, right? So they'll mark your truth and the things you put out as probable spam, especially if it's about Trump or Israel or any of that good stuff. So yes, the things around this Charlie Kirk thing, which I'm not going to go into a whole lot today because I feel like it's been beat to death, but I am starting to think that the entire purpose of that PSYOP was to use the rallying cry of political extremism, right? Radicalization by social media, because that's what old Bibi Netanyahu is starting to talk about right now, all the anti-Semitism. We need to have a talk with Elon. I'll show you guys a clip in a little bit, right? they're not liking all the noticing that's going on here. There's a lot of noticing taking place. Okay. And people aren't so much looking at the small hats like victims anymore, right? They're more looking at them like the terrorist state that they actually are, right? So I think that this whole Charlie Kirk thing is turning out to be a big ploy, or was a big ploy, to say, oh, Charlie Kirk got killed by radical extreme ideology, and it's because of social media and all the lies on X about Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump and all this stuff and all the anti-Semitism, because let's not forget he was debating that one kid about the Talmud, and the kid had a shirt that said sniper on it. We showed that on here too. So, and all of the things that are coming out following the Charlie Kirk event indicate that it did not go as they had planned. And now they're doing damage control. There's a whole bunch of events that have just recently been taking place within the last week, a bunch of shootings, a church shooting, all sorts of stuff. And so they are ratcheting up the distractions, trying to get people to stop focusing on Charlie Kirk, because people are just digging right into that. It exposes the Trump administration as liars. It exposes the fact that it was a distraction from the Epstein files. It's casting a light on the suspicious nature of both political parties and government, how they seem to be working together when it really matters, right? So they give us the illusion of this WWE match. Oh, the Republicans hate the Democrats. Democrats hate those libtards, those magatards, blah, 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 right? But when it comes to Israel, or when it comes to digital IDs, or when it comes to AI governance, they work perfectly in lockstep with one another. There's no disagreement there. They voted pretty much together to block the release of the Epstein files, so there wasn't too much disagreement on that. They voted to send, hundreds of millions to Israel on the same day Charlie Kirk died, so wasn't much disagreement on that. They work together when it really matters, right? And the only thing that matters to them is enslaving us. So that is what I'm going to go into today, because that's what I think they're going to end up using the fallout around the, people not buying the Kirk assassination thing. Whether people think he was actually killed or not, I think the whole thing was staged, especially after seeing all the stuff come out about Erica Kirk. It's like, these people are actors. They're developed, right? They're developed over a period of years, so you never suspect that they're actors, right? They're meta-scripted onto the world stage by God knows what, possibly AI at this point. I'm not even sure, but these characters are fully fleshed out and developed and worked on for years, so they can eventually bring them out into the public eye and use them to engineer society one way or another. So, and people who cannot see the long game behind these strategists, and they do play a long game, right? So what they do is they're patient. And the key to their success is their patience. They take little bit by little bit. And like RFK said, what they take, they'll never give back. So they only have to take a little bit at a time, chip away at it, right? And that's what they're doing now with the AI governance, digital ID. They're floating it, throwing it out there, see how people react. Let's go ahead and implement it in a nation that's already given up their guns, right? Let's do that. So England's going to implement the new digital ID and said within a year, you won't be able to work in England unless you have a digital ID. And if people accept that digital ID, that's it. That's game over. Okay. Because everything that they've done with the law, everything that they've done in pushing people into these regionalized sectors of the countries, right, and cities congregated together, entirely dependent on the corporate state for everything they need, has all been about forcing you into a position of indentured servitude forever. Right? They view you as resources. They view you as cattle. They view you're not people to them, because if you were one of the people, you'd be wealthy like they are. You're just an idiot, or you're bad with money, or you're irresponsible. And so what happens to you is not their concern. You're not even people. You're just property. You're human resources. You're labor chattel, tax chattel. That's it. Right? So, and the fallout of this whole Charlie Kirk thing, this is the new angle that they're taking as a result of this. Now that I'm done pontificating about the New World Order being put into place, let's see here. Pull this up real quick.
Influencers. Okay.
Listen to this.
Christian influencers. Okay. You said, we talked about the woke right, and you said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, you know, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're the what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And, you know, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight. So
I know the audio is probably, it seems like it's a little low, at least on my end. I don't know how well you guys can hear it, but he's essentially saying anybody who questions Israel is part of this new section of conservatives they call the woke right or the woke Reich. Right? Of course, got to make the Nazi pun there, right? And so now they're all the people who don't buy the Kirk assassination, all the people that believe that Israel's behind it one way or another, right, are part of this new category of radical ideologues called the woke right. And he needs to talk to Elon Musk because, you know, X is a real big problem. They just took over TikTok, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew that. They just took over TikTok. That was the Trump signed an executive order handing TikTok right over to Israel. So that's going to be a pro-Israel platform in no time. Now they want to have a conversation with Elon Musk, which is primarily where myself and many other content creators can find uncensored content to show you guys, right? Well, you know, I can't show you all of it, but some of it on the censored platforms like YouTube and Zuckerbook, right? So this is the plan, right? Is a radical extremism. And now I would be willing to bet that we have in store for us before the end of the year some sort of catastrophic event that is going to be blamed on radical extremist ideology being propagated by social media. Why? Because they've already got Gideon in the wings. And that opens the door for pre-crime. So now you've got people that post the truth, that notice, that stand strong for the truth, and I feel vindicated in fighting for what's right, are now going to be labeled extremist radicals, right? And you're going to, oh my God, the future that opens up under that Gideon software, it's like, okay, you don't even actually have to do anything. You could have never intended on doing anything. They could just not like what you're saying or exposing about them and come and arrest you and say you are going to do this because Gideon software has 100% success rate. And it just knew that this is the same type of ideology that caused, say, Charlie Kirk to get killed or something like that, right? So ridiculous. Let's go ahead and finish this real quick.
I don't know if you guys saw what happened at the UN today, but everyone is fatigued from Netanyahu. Like, what does he mean that he needs to talk to both TikTok and that if they go through or if it happens that it's consequential? Is he referring to the purchase of TikTok from the United States? And then what does he mean by talk to Elon? What's that going to happen if he talks to Elon? Are they going to censor free speech on these platforms? I mean, X is pretty open. TikTok, you can't even, I don't even know if this video will be up. Did we just witness a foreign prime minister say he needs to censor Americans and spread only certain specific propaganda and information to better their population, to better their defense, to get more resources from the Americans? Because to me, it just looks like he's losing support from the entire world and wants to make sure he doesn't lose the billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in funding the United States has provided over the last 50 years.
So that's exactly right. That is what they're going to attempt to do, is censor all that. And they blame it as anti-Semitism. You know, too many people are noticing that we're genociding an entire, group of people and are speaking up about it. And that's antiseptic. So we're going to have to go ahead and shut that down. Right. And this is truly evil. Like he just said, what he pointed out is that a prime minister of a foreign nation is talking about censoring Americans because what is being said by Americans does not benefit the population of his country. And why? And see, this is the noticing, right? This is what people are noticing, that even normal people who never would have noticed before are now noticing and are fed up with, and they do not know how to respond to this. They do not know how to combat this awakening that's taking place. And now it's a race against the clock. And that's why I think we will have something extreme happen in order to usher in the Gideon software and the digital ID and AI governance. Because if they do not get that set up within the next year or two, they're never going to get it set up. Too many people will be awake. And that's why I think it's crunch time for them. Right? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let's hear what you guys had to say about that. They're golem, they're a golem powered by antiseptic. That's hilarious. Digital corpo fascism, world communism. That is true. That's actually a very good description of exactly what they're trying to set up. It is 100% communist, but see, people don't realize that communism and fascism are basically two sides of the same coin, and democracy is the bridge between them. Right? Because democracy is slavery. Democracy is mob rule. The minority are enslaved by the majority. 49% of people are subject to the will of 51%. That's why it's an unworkable model, especially if they're able to make that entire 51% stupid. We all know that percentage is actually even higher. The amount of people who have no idea about history or about law or about how banking works or any of that stuff, it's a lot higher. And those people are allowed to affect and influence your life. That's why we were never supposed to be a democracy in the first place. We're a constitutional republic, which means anything that's carried out by your personal property rights, your personal common law rights are never to be legislated against, that's never to be up for a vote, right? But because they reduced you to an enfranchisement, a 14th Amendment debt slave of a bankrupt corporation, they now can regulate you and administer you as mortgaged property held in trust as collateral for the public debt. March 9th, 1933, House Congressional Record, page 83, they mortgaged you. They mortgaged your estate, your property rights to the central banking cartel, ultimately to the small hats, right? Which is why Bibi Netanyahu goes around talking about, well, I control Trump and I control the United States of America. And Trump, it's just public. You can just look it up. He's going around saying, I control Trump and I control the United States of America. And Trump doesn't correct the record. He doesn't go, oh, no, he doesn't. He doesn't control me. No. He's got a special spot under his desk for filleting Netanyahu, for sure. Okay. Listen, Trump cracks me up sometimes. He's funny speaker, but please do not fall for the illusion that he's saving you, that this is trust the plan, right? Cue patriots, right? All that. That's a huge intelligence, probably Mossad psychological operation. Okay? It is. Don't trust the plan. The good billionaires are not saving you from the bad billionaires. They're all on the same team. And if you haven't noticed, everything Trump has been doing since he's been back in office has been marching us into this digital prison. Check this out. This is from a good friend of the channel and Jurist Society member. Corbett sent me this morning. It's a very cool, it's not cool. It's not cool at all what's actually happened, but it's a very good collection of everything Trump's been doing to march us towards digital enslavement. Now, I thought this image was pretty funny. Hey, look, it's a gift from Trump. I don't know, man. MAGA's on our side. You sure? And it says Starlink. It's a fucking Trojan horse. Of course it is. Catherine Austin Fitts said a complete re-engineering of the U.S. government through the digital systems is now possible at high speed. That's the whole purpose of Doge in the first place. Doge wasn't coming in there and getting rid of government waste and corruption, none of that. No, they were getting rid of the non-essential people that AI could replace and then setting up the infrastructure for AI to take over those areas. That's what they were doing. Okay. And a lot of it had to do with the healthcare system and the wealth, the social security payment systems, essentially the treasury systems, right? All together, because that's in preparation for, just like, what did Trump do with the Genius Act, right? He authorized the infrastructure to be set up for a digital stable coin for the government. Well, that is the backbone to the digital currency. right? He says, oh, he's going to end the central banks. Well, that's probably true. That's probably true. He wants to get rid of it because now that banking era is phasing out, right? It's unsustainable. People are waking up to it, and they need a more permanent and subtle and effective system of control. Digital currency fits that bill. Okay. They can shut it off. They can control what you can purchase with it. They can control you, force your compliance. Do not accept it. So let's take a look at a few of these things. He says, surveillance state says, recap: real ID enforced, stable coins incoming, mRNA Stargate project. What the hell is that? And it's that self-replicating mRNA, which means to me, we've had conversations about, germ theory, stuff like that, right? We're not going to get into that because we're both on YouTube and Facebook, and I highly doubt that would stay up for very long. But even outside of that, what they're trying to do is recreate what they've gotten people to believe in. And so nanotechnology it does exist. And if it's self-replicating nanotechnology that's microscopic, capable of just going between the pores of your skin or into your mucous membrane, stuff like that, very easily could simulate anything that they wanted to simulate. Any kind of, illness that they want to tell you is now spreading around, and then they flip a switch and that nanotechnology activates within your body, and you come down with whatever it is that they're trying to get everybody to believe. So that's what I think the mRNA Stargate project is. But the TSA biometric overhaul, that's another thing. Yeah, ICE using facial recognition. Palantir in 30 plus federal agencies, which is something interesting with the whole Charlie Kirk thing. Palantir ultimately owns the property where the shooter's gun was found. How about that shit? Right? How about that? As they ultimately own a subsidiary company. Yeah, Joseph Osborne says the bestest and biggest bill. He's so proud. Yeah, that funded Palantir with the largest military contract of the entire thing, along with other AI surveillance system companies, right? So with the Palantir got hired with the big beautiful bill to create a massive digital database. I wonder if that's to accompany the real ID that's eventually going to be biometric and inside of you, which is how it has to be, because when the AI takes over, it has to see nothing but the corporate fiction. Okay, eliminate due process, eliminate people's ability to challenge the validity of the trust arrangement and contracts that you've entered them into against their will, right? That's what arraignment, that's what due process is for. So people who know the law can fight. But if you place AI in charge of everything and the 14th Amendment citizenship into your biology, you're fucked. It's over with, right? So Sergeant Frog Dog says, but really, I'm not here. Good to see you, Sergeant Frog Dog. By the way, if you're watching on Facebook, if you want to join the panel, join the stream, go to the YouTube, which is linked in the Facebook, and I have the link pinned in the chat, StreamYard. You can just join on any mobile device, tablet, computer, obviously. So if you guys are interested in coming up on panel, that's how you do it. I always welcome people as long as they stay on topic and, don't be disrespectful or try to get the channel taken down, and we're good. So the Genius Act, here we go. There's support for legislation to create digital stablecoin infrastructure. Presumably, this can be used to create programmable money system in both the U.S. and globally. So yeah, he's, of course, we're leading the way with the world digital currency, obviously. So it says this Substack exposing the darkness said that the stable coins would likely eventually replace all cash and would enable governments to freeze the accounts of anyone declared in violation of lawful federal, state, or executive branch regulations, or radical extremists on social media, right? Those people who are noticing a little too much and are getting a little too antiseptic, right? That's, yeah, just shut off your bank account. That's why they're in such a race to get this to set up, because this would be the most efficient way to control a large population of people until you can cull that herd down a little bit, which they also intend on doing. Make no mistake, they literally are not done with their culling yet. So that's how I'm going to put it, because again, we're on Facebook and YouTube, but whatever. Anyway, so these federal, state, or state executive branch regulations, such as jab mandates passed down in 2021. Can you imagine if they had this digital currency system already set up when they started that bullshit? Then it probably would have worked, right? It wouldn't have been such a complete failure, because you don't go get your jibbity jab, right? You don't get to buy groceries. You don't even get to, you could have $1 million in digital currency in your account, but they control whether or not you can use it. And so, yeah, you better believe that would have been, they kind of put the cart before the horse on that one. But see, they needed that scam to get their surveillance infrastructure set up. Don't you remember when everybody was locked in their homes, they were busy setting up towers popping up every day, brand new towers everywhere. It's like, when did they even build these things? Right? And you don't notice because nobody's doing anything. All the businesses are shut down. Nobody's really doing a whole lot, but hanging out in their house. And that's why, because they wanted everyone in their house while they set up this digital control grid, which they did. And then silently, through one of your phone's updates, put a CV19 tracking system. It's called, contact tracing technology into your phone. It's still in there right now. Still in there. You got to go turn it off. If you've never turned it off, it's on. So just so you guys know, this is the type of shit that they're doing. So he said he would ban CBDCs, which is central bank digital currencies, right? But stable coins are in every important respect CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. So he's telling you he's going to do one thing, right? He's having you look at his right hand while he's shoving his left hand up your ass. Is what's happening. He speaks real eloquently, and well, maybe not so much sometimes. And he's entertaining when he speaks. I give him nice, hilarious. But everything he's telling you is a fucking lie. And just like he said when he was running for president, you knew I was a snake when you let me in. That was his poem. That was him telling you. Right? So, Joseph Osborne says, when did they get the funding to install? Oh, that was probably one of the relief bills that they passed, for sure. That's how they slipped the funding in there for those towers. Absolutely. That was the largest transfer of wealth in history, actually. The last 5 years have been the largest transfer of wealth from the middle and lower classes of society to the wealthy. That gap between poor and rich has expanded exponentially, so much so that within the next few years, nobody will be able to afford to buy a home, which is more than fine with BlackRock, because what have they been doing? They've been going around buying up subsidiary companies like Blackstone and other ones that used to be a part of their company. So obviously, they're still controlled. They're going around and buying up all of these all this real estate and then making it so that the houses are rental only. There's entire communities getting put up that are rental only. Why is that? Because ownership gives you lawful right. They have to make it so that when they get rid of the central bank fiat currency, which carries liens with anything you purchase with it, because you're not purchasing anything, it's an evidence of debt. We don't pay debts, we discharge them, right? And all you're doing is exchanging debt and evidence of debt back and forth. That's it. So once they get rid of that, they need to make sure you still can't own anything. If you have actual tangible currency with actual tangible value, not based on the mortgage of your estate and your sweat equity and your projected future tax dollars, right? So they're setting up a system. They're preparing for 15-minute cities, which Trump calls freedom cities, but I don't care what you call it. If it's placed under digital surveillance and digital or AI governance, and it's part of Agenda 2030. Any way you spin it, there's no other way to spin it. So, yeah, that's taking place. But let's go on. So Armstrong Economics said, essentially, the government is turning the stable coin into a digital dollar of sorts. The concern here is that this could delve into digitizing all currency and creating a CBDC. the acts, see what they're going to do, not to digress too much from this, is they're going to create their digital currency. It's going to have the illusion of being decentralized and not controlled by one central source. But secretly, it's all going to be managed by Palantir, probably. And they're going to have some sort of backdoor into it to be able to track what's purchased with all that stuff. So they're going to give you the illusion of decentralized digital currency and act like that's a path to freedom. Finally, we got rid of that damn central bank that's been enslaving us for the last 100 years. And now we can work on getting ourselves out of this hole. Well, what he's not telling you, what he has told you, actually, let's start with what he has actually told you. That Treasury dividend dollar, the new money revolution, the thing he signed an executive order to create the sovereign wealth reserve, right? The digital assets that are going to back this new currency is your data, is you. And that's why it's called a dividend dollar, because they're going to give you a snippet of it in the form of universal basic income is actually what it's going to be. But what they're going to tell you is it's basically your interest, your dividend payment for being used by the federal corporation as collateral, as an asset, rather, right? As an asset that basically, so it's going to be a big tax / data farm. Instead of being a tax plantation, it's going to be a data mining operation, right? And the governments are going to charge the various tech companies a certain fee for gathering data from their tax chattel, right? And let's not forget Bill Gates' patent 060606 or whatever it is, where it's going to allow them to harvest Bitcoin or harvest cryptocurrency from biological activity, which is horrifying when you think about that, because what does that open the door for? Right? That's a whole new concept of prison bond right there. I think that's real-time investment. These institutional investors can make real-time investment on prisoners and court bonds and court fines and fees and coupons and all that stuff, because that's why they generate all that shit, is to sell it to private institutional investors, because debt is currency. So if they can use you as surety and collateral to generate their own commercial paper, they can turn around and sell that to institutional investors. That's the real value of the Federal Reserve dollars, their note rather, not dollars, their ability to control you. That's it. All right. So the act specifically provides the government with the authority to block, freeze, and reject specific or impermissible transactions. This provision is not intended to protect the world against drug smugglers and thieves, which of course is what Trump's going to try to paint it as. That's why he wanted to see how people would respond to blowing up that Venezuelan boat. Right? He wanted to see, are people going to be happy? Are they going to cheer on the, dismembering or basically just immolation of foreign citizens, even if they are traffickers? How do you know? That's the whole thing. It probably was no boat. It was probably just a psychological operation to see how people would respond, because he wants to see if that's a good avenue to take when implementing their Genius Act, right? Well, drugs are a real problem. We need to go ahead and institute this stable coin so we can see everything that's, is purchased and who sold it, and we can hold people accountable and all that good shit. Yeah. And it's going to be under the guise of public safety. Public safety is the rallying cry of the tyrant. Always. That's why Benjamin Franklin said, those who sacrifice their liberty for security deserve neither and will lose both. And that's 100% true. But my favorite saying, and I say it all the time on this channel, is the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants alike, because that tree is thirsty. That's Thomas Jefferson. And the last part's mine. But I'm sure many of you agree. So we have, let me see what you guys are saying real quick. Just like access to the internet, .gov already owned. Yeah. Well, and that's the way they're going to try to implement the digital ID. See, they need to create an online profile. They need to create they need to link your identity digitally to your internet use. That's what they're already doing in New Zealand, Australia, England, some parts of the United States. where they're saying to ensure that children don't access adult content or content that could be harmful for them. Everyone who uses the internet is supposed to link their IP address, their internet usage, up to their legal entity identification, which of course is the straw man tied to the public debt that has you in slavery that they want to make permanent on you. So beware of that trick. Down in Texas, you want to go on an adult website of any kind, right? You need to upload a picture of your ID, which is insane, right? So, I mean, hopefully you guys don't need it that bad and you just boycott that shit. And then the adult websites, you know, their traffic just plummets everywhere where that law is implemented. See, they're counting on your vice to enslave you. That's why, you know, and they're within their rights to charge or to turn that into a tool of enslavement, because you're not supposed to be engaging in it in the first place. So how can you be like, well, we demand our porn, right? And you can't really do that. So anyway, all right. So unlimited control. So this provision is intended to grant government unlimited control over how people spend stable coins, right? So here's some links. You know, I'm going to link this whole publication for everybody in the chat, because we're definitely not going to go through it all. It's quite a publication. I have other things to show you, but there's links and receipts for everything. Like this is a link. Yeah, there's tons of links in this Armstrong economics. So everything that's quoted in here is linked and you can verify, right? So this isn't fear porn or none of that stuff. This is really happening. He really is setting up the digital prison. So at Solari, which I assume is on X, says, worried about Epstein? Congress and administration signed into law the Genius Act with no protections against programmable money. So the genociders and the PDF files, right, will be able to track or turn your money on and off. So guess what happens when they want your children? Yeah, that's a very good question. Why Secretary Bessent, are there no financial freedom protections against the programmable money in your stablecoins? Well, let us not forget that same Scott Bessent worked for BlackRock, right? That same Scott Bessent is buddies with Larry Fink and the rest of the big money guys that, you know, are behind setting up this social credit system. Ultimately, that's what this whole thing is, social credit system, right? So that your behavior will be assigned a score and they can punish you accordingly, right? So, oh, I'm sorry, your social credit score is only 450. You can't leave your neighborhood, right? You'll have to send your wife to the grocery store because she's got a better social credit score than you do, or something along those lines. So the big, beautiful bill plus the Genius Act has actually given all the tools of apparatus for the 1984 scenario. We've actually consolidated all of the data of all the different departments, and we handed it over to Palantir, the Orwellian data nightmare to build the social credit score and global credit score is here. So make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, Trump is not the good billionaire saving you from the bad billionaires. He's not the white hat saving you from the black hats. Do not trust the plan, okay? Because the plan is actually a pot of water that's being brought to a slow boil while you sit in it without noticing that it's heating up. That's what the plan is. So if you want to trust that plan, feel free. Go ahead and stay in the pot. But I'm of the opinion that we need to make like Nepal. Nepal showed us how easy it is to take care of this problem we're having. All right. How many of us are there? You guys ever seen A Bug's Life? How many of us are there? Billions. How many of them are there? Maybe millions. Maybe. There's so many more of us. And here in the United States, we have superior firepower. So that's just a fact, right? So anyways, if you guys get the chance, and he goes through and tells you exactly why Trump is setting up and how Trump is setting up this digital prison for his Israeli overlords, because that is definitely who's setting up, same people who are behind the last 5 years. So I got something interesting to show you. Check this out. Let me pull this up real quick. And this might be a little better audio for you guys too, to be able to hear what the hell Netanyahu was saying.
Bet you didn't see this.
So something I would like to raise, which was actually my first published paper, was how you and the Likud party are cut from the same ideological cloth as Trump and the GOP in America. And so specifically with Charlie Kirk's assassination, who was a big mentor of mine, my first mentor in the space, evangelicals, from all my research, evangelicals are the reason that Israel has been supported in public sphere outside of just Jews. So with Charlie's assassination and with the kind of trajectory that we see with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, I guess I'm curious about what's another game plan if we lose evangelical support for the state of Israel? What's our backup plan to be strong outside of the diaspora?
Christian.
See, she's not wrong. Evangelical support has been a huge part of the boomer generation and onward, not only accepting Israel, but blindly, rabidly supporting it as if their salvation depends on protecting these people, right? And sending them money and supporting them in every way possible. And that might be changing because of various actors like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. But here's the thing about those people. That's controlled opposition. So let's how many of you know that, well, everybody knows Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, or not Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk were both very good friends, supposedly. I think they were MK Ultra experiments, both of them, right? Turning Point is an operation created by the Pilgrim Society, okay, which is basically England trying to take back all of its land that it lost. And ultimately, it was a huge part of giving that portion of Palestine to Lord Rothschild that eventually created Israel. It's one of the roundtable groups created by Cecil Rhodes. The trust fund he left after he died to create roundtable groups like the Pilgrim Society, the Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, all of those, right? These think tanks where the leaders of government and big business get together and figure out how they're going to enslave the rest of us openly in front of everybody. Reporters aren't allowed to report, but reporters are invited because they're part of the control system, right? The heads of major television networks and news networks and stuff like that are all invited to the Bilderberg and all that stuff. But anyway, so the Pilgrim Society created Turning Point, or rather the members involved with Pilgrim Society. So Candace Owens' husband, his dad is in the House of Lords in England. His name is Lord Michael Farmer. Now, would you imagine that guy doesn't support Israel? Would you imagine that guy doesn't support everything that's going on right now? Of course he does. So how does that work with that being Candace Owens' father-in-law? Very white, very English, and very, very wealthy and powerful father-in-law who's part of the government of England. She's controlled opposition, guys. And the whole purpose of these people coming out and speaking out against Israel is to allow them to make themselves look like they're being victimized in order to justify, not to this generation, because this generation will never buy it, but in the future, when they're teaching the history of this period of time, they're going to teach people that Israel was being oppressed by this radical extremist ideology that swept the world, and they had to take extreme measures and put everything under AI governance and just to save God's chosen people. That's what they would teach to future generations. So the Charlie Kirk or the Candace Owens and the Tucker Carlsons only exist and speak out against Israel, which Charlie only did towards the end of his character before they took him off the stage. Is to create the illusion that Israel's being unjustly attacked, and not for this generation, but for future generations to look back on it and not have any access to the truth of what was going on, but only have access to edited and cropped clips of Tucker and Candace and various people like Nick Fuentes, huge agent. That dude is absolutely an agent, 100%. You know, that guy came out right after. He's supposedly always been talking about Israel, always talking about, the Jew this, Jew that. Well, he came out right after Charlie Kirk, that whole stage thing, right? And he said, all you people who are saying it was Israel are crazy. It definitely, don't know what happened, but it definitely was not Israel. Well, your mask slipped a little bit there, Nick Fuentes. Now we see that you're just another controlled opponent, just like Tucker, just like Candace, just like the rest of them. Right? It's to justify the passage of all of this police power they're handing over to AI. Anyway, I digress long enough. Listen to this. So he says Christian influencers, right? Listen.
Influence. He said, we talked about the woke right. And he said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant, the woke Reich, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. They're insane. They're but they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically.
We have to secure that part of our base of support in the United States, right? What Schofield spent so much time and energy building with his translation of the Bible, with all of its notes associating Israel with, you know, modern day Khazars, okay? That's another big thing that brainwashed a lot of Christians, and I'm sure you guys already know that, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But yeah, that's a good point. So Dirty Ketchup says, can we take a second to appreciate that there is literally a Star of Rem fan on the flag behind BB? Yes, there is, and it's intentionally facing out, which I've got something pretty cool to show you guys here in a moment, just as a little side piece on Zabbatian Judaism, which is something I was explaining the other day, but I didn't have any of the information pulled up. So this is absolutely the world elite. These red bracelet wearing Kabbalists, which Candace Owens wears a red bracelet. Tucker Carlson wears a red bracelet. Charlie Kirk wore a red bracelet, right? They all do. It's a big fad to show that they're part of the club. And these people are essentially, they're accelerationists. And they believe by serving the devil, they serve God. So it's a good point. But yeah, so he wants to protect that part of their support base, the Christians who just blindly support everything that Israel does because of the, you know, propaganda that came out with that the Bible was used alongside this propaganda to get these Christians. So how is he going to do that? Well, I think he'll tell you without telling you.
But wait, there's more.
If you were the PR consultant for them, what would you tell them?
I tell them to get a bunch of social media influencers, because the real problem is with Generation Z. That's where they're losing ground, and that then affects as it bubbles up to generations above. And unfortunately, we have a number of very loud, I don't think they represent a majority, but they're very loud and they're influential. These are voices in the US that are primarily just raw isolationists who will say, well, America first means America only.
Patriotism is not part.
Yeah, so there's actually a whole bunch of influencers on social media now, obviously, conservative influencers who are calling out the woke right. And this is a new phenomenon. These influencers are being paid by, well, you probably guess, Israel, to promote Israel, to give a pro-Israel message on their social media account. And they are. And not only that, but they're mocking people who criticize Israel, calling them, of course, antiseptic, right? But also saying that we're crazy, right? We don't know what we're talking about. We're just so filled with hate, right? I seen these one influencers where they're talking about they own all the businesses. They have all the money. If you would take notes from some rich people, some successful people, you wouldn't have to sit in your basement spreading hate every night, right? This is the message that they're trying to say about, like, as in, one, we live in our parents' basement, all of us that criticize Israel, and we're losers and we don't have money, right? This is the picture they're trying to paint here about critics of Israel. So yeah, this part of the campaign is in full swing already. And I think it'll fizzle out pretty quickly because those people look stupid. And you've got other people who are like, hey, you know, everybody needs to go and unfollow those people right now. And yeah, I agree. If you're following any of those people, I'll show you a video here in a minute where the guy is talking about this, and his name's Ryan Matta on X. He's actually got some pretty good content, so go ahead and check him out if you get a chance and you have X. And he compiled a list of all these influencers that are filleting Israel right now. And yeah, go on there, see if you're following any of them, and fuck them. Get out of there, right? So, all right, this is what I want to show you guys about this Sabbatian Judaism. This video is incredibly long. So, I mean, I can link it for you guys if you want to watch the rest of it. So here, I'll put this in the chat. All right. And then I'm going to show you guys this. So Sabbatian Judaism. Okay. This is what the people who run the world are really into, what they're really all about. Hold on, it's loading. All right. So coincidentally, you're going to see from this video I'm about to show you just how much this influenced the creation and the rise of central banking, and actually just the entire Rothschild system. They are 100% Sabbatian Frankists for sure. So try not to say the J word too much here on YouTube, but you know, anyway, let me share this with you guys real quick.
This is Zabbatai Zevi. He declared himself to be the Jewish Messiah, non-coincidentally, in 1666. He led the largest Messiah movement in Jewish history. He attracted more than half of all European Jews. He promised to return them to their so-called homeland in Palestine. He inverted every holy teaching in the Torah to unholy teachings. No more guilt, no more sin, no right or wrong, no more 10 commandments, no more sexual limits, no fasting, only feasting, and no more upholding the Sabbath. His immoral leadership finally fell from grace when the Sultan of Turkey threatened to torture him and kill him if he did not convert to Islam. He converted, but his evil, infectious theology didn't die. 1 century later, Jacob Frank claimed to be the reincarnation of Zevi and the living Messiah of all so-called Jews. Frank and his disciples were even more wicked. He rejected and inverted the Torah, just as Zevi did, and said, since we all can't be saints, let's be sinners. He claimed the best way to emulate God is to cross every boundary.
So the most important thing about that is that Jacob Frank, who claimed to be the reincarnated Zabbatai Zevi, right, was a contemporary of Meyer Amschel Rothschild. So the rise of these two figures are directly related to one another, and they both, right here, transgress God's law.
Every taboo and mix the sacred with profane. In 1773, Jacob Frank traveled to Frankfurt, Germany, to the birthplace of the modern banking cartel and the Illuminati. There in Frankfurt, Germany, he formed an alliance with Adam Weishaupt and A.M. Rothschild of the Rothschild banking dynasty. The purpose of the alliance with the Rothschild dynasty was to win control of the world's gold, central bank, and wealth for obvious reasons. Over time, the Rothschilds sent their agents of John Jacob Astor, Jacob Schiff, and Paul Warburg to America, where they infiltrated the privatization of the Federal Reserve System and dismantled the U.S. Constitution. The goal of Weishaupt and his Jesuits was to take control and undermine the hierarchy of the Catholic clergy. It's obvious today that Weishaupt has achieved his goal. Weishaupt also formed the Order of the Illuminati.
That's pretty much what I wanted to get across, because I'm pretty sure that damn song they're playing in the background, they're going to try to hit me with a copyright, but that's why I sped it up. And if you're just now tuning into this and it just randomly picked up here in the stream for some reason, that's because I had to cut that section out. That's important because I do believe that these people were that they get assistance from dark forces, man. I do. I know it's crazy. I know it's crazy to a lot of people, but I think that there's a reason that they do all these rituals and stuff, all this super, hokey pokey, occult, dark, satanic stuff. They wouldn't do that if they weren't getting something out of it. Right. I mean, and look at all the people behind, say, like, this would be a good thing to show because this plays right into, I'm saying these people are Satanists. So like Diddy, Jay-Z, all these guys wearing Crowley t-shirts, Do What Thou Wilt, all that, Lady Gaga, all of them hanging out with Marina Abramovich, or Michelle Lamey, right, who are both high priestess witches, high level ones over there in Hollywood, right? Shit, actually, I'm pretty sure Marina Abramovic works for the State Department. So there's that too. And she's the one who does spirit cooking, and they make cakes that look like human bodies and blood and, you know, all that stuff. They're just fucked up people, right? Well, why do they do all that unless they're getting something out of it? It wouldn't make any sense any other way. Now we look at the people who founded NASA. Look at the people who founded JPL and Disney and L. Ron Hubbard. All these people are friends, right? They were all friends. They were all, well, maybe not so much Parsons and Hubbard, because Hubbard ran off with Parsons' wife, but they all worked together doing something called the Babylon working ritual. I came across this video and it was actually pretty interesting. This theory, and this is just a theory this guy has, and I found it interesting. I don't really know if I agree with him 100%, but I think you guys will find it interesting too, because it relates to NASA and ultimately to Donald Trump and what's going on now. Make no mistake. The system that they are trying to set up right now is the beast system. Absolutely the beast system from Revelations. No question. Yeah, most people just look at their bank account. Is that what? Yeah, that's pretty much. So Godheart Guardian says the Israeli government bloodline are just one of a handful of peoples that are vessels and a front for the principalities to move through. I believe, yeah, 100%. I agree. And I think they use their bastard children too as ultimately MK Ultra assets to carry out various things, whether under possession or just regular normal mind control, which I think the MK Ultra mind control is partially possession, right? That's why they use so much Satanism, SRA, in order to achieve the MK Ultra Project Monarch mind control. So I think they open doors and let things in there. But hey, maybe I'm crazy. I can't prove that. It's just my theory. You know, if something's my theory, I tell you guys it's my theory. Okay. I bring the receipts for all the stuff I tell you I know for a fact. Like, I know that they mortgaged your estate in 1933 to set up this trust indenture system. And now they want to take this trust indenture system and make it digital and permanent. And that will tie you forever digitally to the straw man. I hate the term straw man. If you're new to my channel, just know I hate that term, but that is what it is. It's a legal entity identification. It is an entity that exists only on paper and in fiction, right? It is a legal fiction to serve the purpose of tying you as collateral to the public debt. You have become chattel property. I can prove every last bit of that. So, all right, check this out. All right. It's a bit of a long video, so I might, speed it up here and there. But it's very interesting. I think you guys will enjoy this. So if it wasn't muted, of course.
All of humanity stand in awe at this final moment. And no, I'm not exaggerating, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Did you know that life as you know it right now was manifested in the 40s and in the 30s, even in the 20s, of satanic rituals done in the California desert by some of the biggest names in the world? Walt Disney, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, the father of our modern rocket technology, which he got from a weird source, by the way. We'll get into that. And so many more, because the secret is not so secret, even though you don't know what it is. Aleister Crowley, Walt Disney, Jack Parsons, they were all friends. Half of them worked for our own government. But what in the world were they doing? I had to...
They did. And as a side note, Aleister Crowley actually worked for MI6. So he was, very few people know this, but if you look and go ahead, try to fact check me on this, because it's a fact. They, both the Nazis and the Allies had their own magicians. Literally, Aleister Crowley worked for the intelligence agencies of England as an occultist, as a ritualist, and someone to counter Hitler's dark occult. This is crazy. I know it is, though. If you guys just look up the V for victory, right? That thing that everybody was doing during World War II, where they held up the peace sign, says V for victory. That's actually a that's a ritual. It's a sigil that Aleister Crowley created. It was created by Aleister Crowley. He created the V for victory to counter various, ritualistic things that Hitler's people were trying to do. So very wild piece of history. Just thought I'd share that with you guys.
Block out a word right here, a word that has to do with intimacy. They were using intimate rituals to do Babylonian workings to bring forth a moonchild to rule the world.
Yes, they were all on the same side. At the top they were, right? So back then they had to be much more low key, because Willie B said, but they were all on the same side. They had to be much more low key about working together, just sort of like how it looks like Russia's our enemy and China's our enemy. But at the very top, they're all buddies. This is all just a big stage performance that they're creating. Well, it's the same thing back then, too, with World War II. Was meant to destroy evidence of whatever previous civilization and reshape the geopolitical landscape of Europe and allow the United States to basically rise as the world superpower because we were the only nation left intact that could manufacture the stuff everyone else needed to rebuild their nation. So, and that created the middle class. That was an industrial boom, post-war industrial boom that created what I like to call the artificial womb of society, where people got used to just working for a company, making enough money to have nice things, buy their house. Only one parent had to work and all that good stuff, right? That was an artificial womb. That was a trick to make you dependent upon the corporate state via grocery stores, indoor plumbing, heating, all that stuff, right? So it was a trick, because now that you're dependent on the corporate state, if there was no grocery store, if there was no indoor plumbing, if there was no heat, right? If you didn't have heat or air conditioning and all that stuff, depending on where you live, right? Most people would just die. They wouldn't even begin to know how to survive. And that they designed society that way in tandem with this communist neo-feudal system they've been setting up too after the bankruptcy. They combined those two factors to create a total subservient and dependent population that couldn't stage a counteroffensive against them for any prolonged period of time, because all they have to do is just shut off the grocery stores. That's it, right? So imagine if we did try to go turn this all around, right? And people did rise up. Well, BlackRock owns everything, and they own BlackRock. So they manage everything, right? Whatever, same thing, because nobody really owns anything anymore. So they'll just shut down everything, just shut it all down and starve you out. That's it. So yes, back then they did still at the top work together, but that was still, they had to trick everyone below them into thinking they were enemies, is what I was getting at. Because if, like, say, General Patton or any of those guys had discovered that they were all working together at the top, you better believe that what they call the greatest generation, which probably was one of the greatest generations in recent history, is, strong and brave men and women of that generation, would rise up and take them out in a second. Now, people have gotten fat, lazy, content. A lot of people don't even have arms, right? So the chances of that happening are significantly reduced, and now they're much more open about working together at the top. So that's why so many people can see it now. They've gotten, some would say, too lazy. But anyway.
A moonchild, conceived of nothing but witchcraft, literal demons and fallen angels were talking with these people. And they recorded every single word. And this moonchild, he will enter the stage, given power as a chosen one, and he will rule with a hand of liberty. But we'll get back to that. So first off, how was Jack Parsons able to get this technology that none of us ever knew? Well, Jack Parsons learned a whole bunch from Aleister Crowley, who they call the Beast. He was also the first person to come in contact with a grave that he actually summoned. And all of these.
Now, that's the other aspect of this, too. And when they were doing the Babylon working ritual, they claimed to see UFOs and stuff. And that's what this UAP phenomenon is. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever come across this this theory that some ufologists have, that they're demons. I know they're demons. Okay, that's something I know, and that's one of the very few things I know but can't prove. But I do know it. right? But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I've got evidence. Look, hey, they're demonic, but there's a lot of things to suggest that they are. And in my heart of hearts, I know they are. They just are convincing everyone. That's part of the reason for the creation of NASA and the whole heliocentric bullshit and the space lie and all that, was then they could present these demonic entities that have been controlling them since time began as aliens from another planet. So it not only did it remove you from your relationship with the creator by thinking you are a evolved monkey spinning on a speck of dust, whirling in 4 different directions simultaneously in an infinite expanse of vast, ever-expanding nothingness, right? So how could there be a God? This was all just an accident, right? It does that, but then it also has the added benefit of when they bring these things out that have been here the whole time, pulling strings behind the scene, they bring them out, they can present them as aliens. Hell, they might even try to create a scenario where they can convince people that they came here to help us and that they're going to take control of everything to help us as they build hell on earth, right? So that's just it's just my take on it, though. So yeah, hold on, let's see. What'd you say, Lumpy? Lumpy said, hold on, let me put this up. It says, but getting the USA military to fire on citizens is an unanswered question. It actually has been answered now, because Trump just said that he was going to go into one of these cities. I don't know, my buddy called me last night. He was all excited about it because, well, he's a MAGA guy. And I'm just like, dude, sending military deploying the military domestically, because they're deploying like the Marine Corps and they're like really deploying the military, and they're authorizing the use of lethal force to quote unquote clean up crime, to combat crime in these Democrat run cities. That's how Trump's painting it, right? I don't care what they're doing or saying that they're doing. Deploying the US military on our own soil to shoot our own citizens is literally the one line that no one should ever tolerate being crossed. Ever. Never should you tolerate. That is insane. Because where's the line at after that? Now, who gets to determine what terrorist is, right? Am I going to be considered something like that because of my the truth that I teach people? You know, the fact that I see and notice what they're doing and have a platform and tell people, right? Will I be labeled that? And then the military can come in and just take me out because I'm promoting radical extremism, they would say, right? So, that should, and he was all excited. I'm like, dude, there's no scenario in which this is a good thing. Okay, well, what else are they going to do? I'll tell you what they'll do. Quit with the anti-gun culture and quit with the demonizing gun ownership and all that, and encourage people to defend themselves. And you wouldn't even have the crime problem in the first place. It would take care of itself. Okay, crime is only extreme in areas where the gun laws are strict, right? Where there aren't strict gun laws, there's no crime. Wonder if there's a correlation between unarmed victims and the propensity to do crime. I would have to say yes. As I'd say, I'd just drop off. You know what? Honestly, I'd just drop off crates of weapons right into the city. Don't deploy the military. Just drop off crates of weapons and let them fucking go to town and then come clean up afterwards. At least the military's not doing it. Right? So that's my take. But anyway, we digressed a little bit there. Let's get back to this. It's pretty interesting.
Different guys were opening portals in the desert. When did the Area 51 thing happen? After they were opening these portals. These grays have a lot more to do with everything than you really know. And I did tell you that Jack Parsons was working for the US government. Meanwhile, in talks with demons and fallen angels and doing this intimate magic in the middle of the desert.
Not the only Satanist to work for the US government either. There's another very famous, popular one who's connected to some PDF file stuff. What was that called? Presidio, right? The Presidio scandal and the McMartin Elementary scandal and all that. Well, his name was Michael Aquino. He was a full bird colonel, if I remember correctly, and the leader of the Temple of Set. And everybody in the military not only knew about his affiliation with the Temple of Set, like how could you not? He looked like fucking Dracula, literally. His eyebrows, he looked like the dad from the Munsters. That's what he looked like Seriously, just look him up. Michael Aquino. He's got these things with his eyebrows. They like wisp up, and it's just whatever. But anyways, they not only knew about his satanic proclivity, but and they were fine with it. They were like, yeah, it's cool. He had entire like rituals and all sorts of stuff on military bases. So, you know, I wonder why. Well, it is said that the Satanists love the military because they look at every war as a massive ritual sacrifice, which I could see that, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of high-level Satanists in the military.
So why were the government's fingers in this? Because the government was awaiting a savior. And their savior looks like a man, but he has a very, very, very old spirit. Like most other visionaries, these people get their information and their technology from divination, higher sources bigger than they are. They go to energetic ley lines, they draw sigils, and they do magic incantations, and they summon devils. The funniest part about it is most of the world thinks that demons and fallen angels don't exist, but the highest up in the government talks to them, and they have documented it. And it is really crazy the way it all connects. Like, we have Dr. Werner von Braun, a tale of Project Mars, right? Of course, being the L, like the Elon, at Mars. And of course, we have that same guy being at a very high place in this world right now. But this is not about him. But I know you are dying to hear who this moonchild is. So let's get back to the Babylonian working. The moonchild was...
Yeah, he's going to reveal who he thinks the moonchild is. And this is where I actually am intrigued by his theory. And this is just a theory. But given all that, well, I'm not going to ruin it. I'm not going to ruin it. Watch it. You guys let me know in the comments who you think it would be. But this was the whole purpose of the Babylon working, and it was called antichrist working rituals that they did in the desert. Again, this was Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, that whole crew that were also part of creating NASA and Scientology and all that shit. Who are now trying to prepare everybody for, an alien invasion, I guess, in 90 days now or whatever it's supposed to be. There's a hostile alien ship supposed to be coming to get us. All right. But I do find his theory intriguing, and all the attention that this individual, the deferential treatment that this individual gets by royalty even is a pretty good indicator that they think something about him. So let's get into it. Let's watch.
Was a thought conceived from the devil himself to Aleister Crowley. And this Babylonian working was basically the final key to get everything to lay out perfectly. The Babylon working, not the moonchild, was a set of rituals taking place from January to March 1946. It was a closing ceremony, if you will, for what was to come and what may be here now, where they documented how they conjured up these demons and these spirits, what they said, and all of that stuff. And these kings of...
I actually just read that earlier. I looked up it's all transcripted. All of Jack Parsons' writings are archived online on a website called Sacred Scripture or sacredtext.com or something, which I thought was I wouldn't call them sacred, but it's just my opinion. But they're pretty interesting. If you guys should check them out sometime. It's pretty insightful as to what these people actually believe.
Darkness would literally speak to these people, Jack Parsons and all of them, and they wrote down what they said. Therefore, I, the Antichrist, call upon the chosen and the elect.
Yeah, we got a couple guesses so far. We got Rems thinks that it's Elon Musk, and Dirty Ketchup thinks it's Barron Trump. So,
upon all men, come forth now in the name of liberty, that we may be forever, get rid of the tyranny of the Black Brotherhood. Get rid of the tyranny of the Black Brotherhood? What is that? Well, the Antichrist spirit that's talking to him told him already, it's Christianity. What a mighty fine inversion, isn't it?
See, and something I've picked up about these people and what they believe, right, is they think there's two gods, right? That Lucifer is God and Adonai is God. In the words of Albert Pike himself, actually, that's an Albert Pike quote. And they think Lucifer is the good God, the God of light, and Adonai is the God of darkness. And that's why they said the Black Brotherhood, right? They want to get rid of the Black Brotherhood. Well, what it is they look at, they think that being able to do sodomy and all the other, perverted and deranged things that have been going on, for the last 5 years in your face, especially, they think all of that is freedom from the tyrannical God that doesn't allow them their sexual liberty and their liberty to sin and to do whatever they want. So that's the freedom that they're actually talking about. That's why they use Lucifer for the Statue of Liberty, right? That's why Lucifer represents liberty to them, freedom from God's tyrannical law, right? The freedom to be the lawmakers themselves. They're trying to replace God. And that's what the whole Luciferianism is about. And they think Lucifer is the one who gives them the knowledge to be able to defeat God, and they actually believe they can win too, which is what's really crazy to me. But yeah.
Higher goal with the moonchild, with everything, was to put an end to Christianity. Y'all do understand that the people summoning these demons and the devil themselves and even the spirit of Babylon, you do understand they're highly respected people, right? Just making sure. So the chosen one will come in the name of liberty and free us from the tyranny of the Black Brotherhood. Now, I'm not showing you close to anything. I don't want to dabble too far in the words of demons themselves. But I can give you a list of who they talk to. They talk to Isis. They talk to Pan. All in these same rituals.
Yeah.
They talk to the spirit.
You can read this stuff. They supposedly, of course, you can have made it up too, but they supposedly talk to like Babylon herself, actually. Babylon's got this whole... there's this whole transcript where Babylon basically communicated to Jack Parsons when he did the ritual and, told him that how to do what he was trying to do and how to bring her kingdom into realization, it's pretty fucking creepy. So,
Spirit of Babylon, that same girl they saw on the back of that beast. You know what the Bible calls it, right? The W word. They talk to every ruling demon since the beginning of the world, the very biggest names. They were present with these people, telling them how to proceed. You gotta block over that. But this was that woman that they were talking to, one of them. Do you remember in Revelations when John wandered after this beast right behind me? And the angel's like, "What are you doing, John?" Then they told him just how evil she really was, drunken on the blood of that pesky Black Brotherhood. And so from January to March, they were working on their rituals, making sure everything was fine for the arrival of the moonchild, which was thought of and started working on months prior. Because remember...
We got, is this Yanush? Is this who just came up?
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. I was hearing that you were speaking about the Jack Parson. I don't know if you probably know this, but maybe people do not know. Supposedly, he couldn't close the gate because he died.
Yes. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So the person who opened it supposedly was the one who has to close it. And
yes, exactly.
Some people think that's why it was demonic forces that caused him to blow himself up by dropping that. I think it was like mercury nitrate or something. He dropped and it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And which they also call like the elixir of Hermes or something. But
yes. Yeah.
Anyway, he blew himself up and never closed it. And so it's just been open. And then so that was the thing about the ufologists I was getting into a while ago. And then I got sidetracked, was that basically there's a theory that ufologists say that by invoking the name of Jesus Christ, when you're having one of these encounters, they said that people who have done that, the encounter stopped immediately. So when they experience like an abduction, an encounter with these things, and they call out for Jesus Christ, the whole experience just stops immediately. And what makes it even more suspicious is when this particular ufologist I'm talking about tried to bring this to the attention of other ufologists, nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And these are ufologists that are making a lot of money in the field by, selling merch and doing all that stuff. They didn't want to, because the whole idea is they need you to believe in that these entities are real. They need you to know that they're real, but they need you to believe that they're from outer space and another planet, right?
So
that they're not actually.
Look, I kind of can't blame them because they invested a lot of money in their merchandise, in their agenda. So if now they would say it's demons, so people would be turning to the rather the church and the Christianity, and rather turning away from them. So it's money, like the same like a scientist, they won't confirm, even if they know, for example, that the globe Earth has no sense. They still invest plenty of money. They have titles and all related perks to it. So they won't do it. because money is god of this earth.
That is true. I can also see why they've done it, but I don't agree with it. Yeah, I would think that that revelation,
exactly. I agree with you 100%, my friend.
that they're actually demons is empowering, because not only does it give validity to everything else we already know to be true, because the Bible is very real. It's very, very real.
It is.
Yeah.
Because Christ said that we will be doing bigger things than he did. So invoking his name, look, he was one man, one God, one man in the human body. Yeah. So he couldn't be at this time everywhere because he was limited by the human body. But because of him, he influenced so many people, and now we can cast out the demons. So in this case, we can say we are doing bigger things than he did, because he could do it only once at a time. But we, as a community across the world, we can do it simultaneously from the multiple places. So yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I think people would be interested. I think a lot more people would readily accept the fact that it's demons than they do aliens. Is that whole NASA, the whole psychological operation of the globe lie in the first place is designed specifically to separate you from God, and to give cover to these demonic entities that actually control the world governments and corporations. Very much definitely is demonic energy, because why would they do all the rituals otherwise? It doesn't make any sense. You think they just like, cosplaying fucking dark magicians or something? No, they don't. They really do this stuff.
Another thing, it's Big Bang Theory, which is total bullshit as well, and the theory of evolution. That's three main things, and the globe Earth. And the fourth thing is, people usually use those three, but I add fourth one, that devil convinced people that he doesn't exist. So that's the four things, the most important from his perspective, no matter of my opinion.
I think the greatest trick he's pulled lately is convincing people that he's actually a good guy. No, I mean, people, they think he's a good guy. They're like, oh, the devil is actually saving us from the tyrannical God who wanted us just to live in ignorance and paradise. Right?
Yeah. I remember there was a question, to the, I forgot his name, but he's Christian and he's a scientist. He works in the UK. And there was an interview, and the guy asked him why you would support this kind of God which doesn't allow the knowledge. And the guy said, it's a very good question, because Satan exactly asked this question. And everyone just erupted, He really put him down.
All right, we're almost all the way through this. Let's watch this so we can get to who he thinks this moonchild is, the product of Jack Parsons' Babylon working rituals and L. Ron Hubbard and all them in the desert. They were supposedly doing this to prepare for the coming of the antichrist, who is to be born. It was supposed to be basically incarnated Babylon, right? So because of this ritual, this is what they believed. I'm not saying this is the case, and I mean, why would I? I can never prove this, but I can prove that this is what they believe, that they were making way for a spirit to enter into a baby that was going to be born at some point in the future. And when you read what Babylon supposedly said to him during this ritual, and you could read it right in his own words, she said, I'm not going to tell you when or whence, right, this will take place. You're not allowed to know that. That's for me. You just do this thing and open the gate for me to be able to do what I need to do later, essentially. Not verbatim, but. And so that's the whole thing. So this necessarily didn't even have to happen in Parsons' time. This could still be yet to happen. But this guy thinks it has happened. And I'm sure you guys are starting to guess who he thinks this Antichrist would be.
The beginning thoughts of this moonchild were in 1929. The rituals that led up to this moonchild were rituals to make sure the reincarnation or the carnation could enter the body as that spirit being evil. So who is this moonchild? Y'all really gonna hate me. But I will follow the information wherever it leads, regardless. If I would not, I would never learn a thing. So after the conceiving of this moonchild, after months and months of rituals to open portals to get everything aligned in the spiritual, 2 months after
And
all
what
the
was the
portals
date?
were open,
Who
all
was
the
born that
rituals
day?
were done, we have the June 14th, 1946 lunar eclipse. Remember, the conceiving of the moonchild happened before the Babylonian rituals. So those rituals were to bring forth, first off, the reincarnation of Babylon back to America. Second, to open the door for basically the devil to inhabit a child. So who is that child? The chosen one that brings liberty in his hand. June 14, 1946. June 14, 1946. A lot of people have a habit of just getting mad at the messenger, like, I'm the one who did these rituals in the desert. But I'm not. I'm just the one giving you the information. I know he's doing good things. Yes, I get that. But it was written in the 20s and the 40s and out the mouth of demons that the moonchild will be chosen and he would lead, and through liberty he would have his way. And the fact that they're all connected to the L. Y'all, that's a lot of coincidences to look past.
He's got a point. That's why I said it was interesting, because he's got a point. So Werner von Braun, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, Walt Disney, they were all part of the same clique. Okay.
Yes.
Werner von Braun wrote that book about Mars, where the main protagonist of the story's name is Elon, who ends up taking people to Mars.
I remember, yeah.
Right. Now, the person working in tandem with Donald Trump here while this thing's actually being realized is Elon Musk. And now, even take that a step further, the company he owns is called Tesla, right? Now, Donald Trump's uncle, John, I'm sure a lot of you know, is the one who ended up getting all of Tesla's research and information on specifically time travel, right? So I find that very interesting too. And so it's almost like the symbolism is revealing exactly like how this has been played out before. I know that's a weird thing to say, but I get that feeling all the time, like this keeps happening. And then they keep trying it over till they get it right. You know what I mean?
And there was a book, supposedly that Trump is a time traveler. Probably
yes, Adventures of Baron Trump. Yeah, where the guy's mentor is Don.
But the one thing
last book, it's a trilogy. The last book is called The Last President. Yeah, the third book is called The Last President. And what he does, Baron Trump essentially goes to the future.
Sorry, I need to interrupt you. That's why he said, vote for me, Christians. I'm not Christian. Just vote for me. You won't need to vote anymore again. Remember this phrase?
Yeah.
It's all aligned.
Yep. And so that's what, and so in the book, he goes to the future, gets elected president, and crashes the economy, destroys the value of gold and silver. So I don't know. It's interesting stuff, but that's pretty much the whole video there.
One question, because I know here people have plenty of knowledge. Still, I don't know, I can't retract when I got this info, but it's still back on my head that the Antichrist, when we introduced to the world, will be supposedly 33 years old, like Christ when he died in a human body. So that wouldn't be aligned unless the Baron Trump is him. And then he will be 33 years old. So I don't know.
That's kind of the running theory with that, but that's way too crazy for me to even get into a whole lot, because you can't prove any of that stuff. Like, the Mandela effect's weird. Right. Yeah. You can't, there's a lot of weird stuff to suggest that it might be a possibility, but, the simple fact is we won't know who the Antichrist is or when he's coming or any of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Until we're meant to, but we can speculate.
So the question is, if anyone knows from where this kind of information could came out, that the supposedly Antichrist, when we introduced to the world, will be 33 years old. If you point me to the direction, because I was trying to look into it, I know I've heard it somewhere, but I freaking can't remember from where I got this info. And it's sticking in my mind, and I can't find the source.
Yeah, I have no idea about that. I never heard that before. I do know, however, that they are setting up this B system right now, and they're trying to implement it everywhere that they've taken the guns already. That's a fact.
Yep. They start
so this right here. Look, check this out. I don't know if you know what's going on in Vietnam or not, but check this out. Vietnam just took all their citizens, 86 million bank accounts, just shut them down in order to bring in their new monetary system, the digital currency that they're going to force, and digital ID that they're going to force everybody to adopt. And they're piloting it in Vietnam right now. They're already doing it. And England, they're starting it. So,
Hey there, and welcome to the Eco Renegade. So, Vietnam has closed 86 million bank accounts. They've frozen them, seized the assets, but they've closed the accounts. And that's 43% of all the accounts. There's around 200 million in Vietnam. Really? And the quote that they give is, prevent fraud and cybercrime. It's always in your best interest, except when it isn't. Can you imagine that number, 86 million, how many millions of people and families that have actually gone into serious, serious trouble because they cannot access their account, either because they refused or couldn't give, the digital ID. That's what they wanted. You had to register a digital ID with biometric data. Give more of your privacy away without your choice. And if you don't do it, we'll take your money.
So that's what they did. That's even worse than what I thought they did. So they implemented the digital ID and all that, the biometric IDs and stuff for the people in Vietnam already. And the ones who didn't accept it, they shut their bank account down and said, got to protect yourself against cybercrime and fraud, right?
It's always bullshit, yeah. That's why I think, remember when we were speaking last time?
Telling them it's bullshit.
I told you that Charlie Kirk it's important event, and I'm expecting something big in 2025. It might be exactly imposed on the whole world before the end of 2025. They might try to do it. So even in the USA, they might try to do it before end of the year. So that will be the event I was speaking since maybe 40 years, 2025. That could be the event.
I'm telling you, they're using this for radical extremism, that they want to paint all of us who actually see the truth as extremists who are promoting extremist behaviors. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a mass casualty, probably a catastrophic event that's going to be blamed on someone like us, right?
Yep.
And
or Russia even to create world war.
No, I mean someone like us that promotes truth. They're going to call it antiseptic. They're going to call it right-wing conspiracy nut, all that stuff, right? And they're going to use that as a justification for some executive orders, right, to allow Palantir to implement some new technology or this Gideon software. And not only that, but also to implement censorship on these social media platforms that don't have censorship anymore, like Rumble or X, right? Even Facebook's gotten pretty Wild West-like recently, right? YouTube's pretty much the only one that stays clamped down.
And even to use the internet, you will have to have this digital ID to log into internet.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You can see everything, all the steps that they're trying to put in place in order to implement this digital beast system is, you're going to have your legal entity identification linked to your internet activity via some sort of digital ID. So all of your entire digital footprint can be traced directly back to you via biometrics.
The problem is you don't have numbers yet. So the question is how you can explain this stuff to the normies and NPCs. It's freaking next to impossible, man. Because they will tell you, you're stupid, you're a conspiracy theorist.
I say this all the time to people on this channel and in general, and I genuinely believe it's true. It's the 100 monkey effect. Okay, so just you don't even have to. I encourage you all to teach people what you know. If you know what you're talking about and can prove it, definitely go spread the news. Teach people, teach them how to prove it. That's what I do here on this channel. But if you do not, still, just by the very act of being awake, you're contributing to the quantum field of consciousness of mankind and making it easier for others to wake up, right? Just like that experiment where they had 100 monkeys on one island and 100 monkeys on this other island that could not communicate with each other whatsoever. And they taught the monkeys on the one island how to do something new. And within a short period of time, the monkeys on the other island knew how to do it. And because it became part of their genetic memory, and I truly believe that's why so many people are waking up. There were those of us who were the first forerunners. Well, I'd say people like my dad is probably the really first forerunner, the boomers who weren't really who never really bought into the system, few and far between, but they had been called crazy their whole life. But even us, we've been called crazy our whole lives up until about the last 5 years, right? It's almost like 2020 gave people perfect vision. And now, just by us having been awake and being there to kindle that fire when it starts, which it started in 2020, it's spreading exponentially, and there's nothing they can do about it. They're panicking, right? So more and more people are waking up. This Charlie Kirk thing is perfect example of how people are waking up. Everybody knows it's bullshit.
They are behind the schedule because this stuff should be already implemented. They are behind the schedule. They are late.
If people don't know that it was staged, they at least know that the dude they're blaming for it didn't actually do it, right? And that's a huge step forward where they're not just blindly believing the government narrative.
Yep.
Right.
Even if I consider Candice Owens as a controlled opposition, she still gives some info. So, and because people following her trust her like a god, so she is still waking up people, even if she's controlled.
No, absolutely. Well, that's why I try to tell people too, is that never throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's a lot of gatekeeping, controlled ops, people that you can still get some good information that's useful and valuable to share with other people.
Exactly. That's why I always say to the people on my channel, I don't listen to this guy because he's leftist, whatever. No, man. Even if you don't agree with him on the fundamentals, he might provide for you some important info, which you wouldn't hear from the right side. So listen to him as well. And of course, discard what is bullshit and what might be true and look into it. That's why I always encourage people in this kind of stuff. But people are just, no, I don't like him. I don't watch him. It's bullshit. These people
Speaking of the Charlie Kirk thing, I found this interesting. This is what I was showing you guys earlier, or telling you guys about earlier, is that the property where they supposedly found the gun is ultimately owned by Palantir, which again, it's another breadcrumb trail that leads directly back to this event was designed to be used to bring in more digital surveillance and AI governance. Of course it was.
Palantir,
right?
if I remember correctly, it's related to the magic balls from the Dungeons and Dragons, something like that. Yeah, it's just like a magic ball. Yeah, remember the balls in the Two Towers?
Are you talking about
by
the movie?
Tolkien? By Tolkien.
Yeah, you're talking about Palantir. That's what Palantir is that little
those balls.
That's why they named their company Palantir.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so check
Seeing the wooded area where the firearm was discarded, and the firearm had a towel wrapped around it. It's important. I'll get back.
683 Properties Inc. or LLC. Dominating the stock market. I hate when people do that scum shit with their dog. I get it.
You to criticize your former employer, it's taboo to do that. But to criticize an employer that also owns extremely lethal technologies and surveillance technologies that are highly invasive and used in war zones.
Yep, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. I'd be willing to bet that guy probably. That guy probably gave himself a double tap to the back of the head with some small caliber, right? Probably.
But you know what is good? No one can know everything, but because now people are really waking up and it's going pretty fast, it's speeding up. So people are dropping bits and pieces, and crumbs, and people are connecting dots. So they see how exactly the spider web works. So it's all freaking connected. Everything is connected. It's one big maze. I've dropped 2 links about the Bible, why it's true. Probably you've seen the previous video when it's in the beginning. It's already saying about the God, Christ. He will sacrifice himself on the cross. So I found the second video, which is exactly translating the "in the beginning" into the Hebrew and what it means. You combine two signs, two letters, and you have different words. So everything is said just in the phrase "in the beginning." So we can watch it later if you want.
Oh yeah, no, I've actually done a video on that myself about, and yeah, that's why I say if people know how to, I mean, I'm not saying people don't know how to read the Bible. I'd never say something like that, but there's a hidden code with the Bible if you know how to read it. And it's, yeah, the entirety of the Bible is in the first 4 lines of Genesis, the whole thing. If you know how to read the symbols that were used, it's encapsulated in the 1611, right? The original 1611, which was penned by
the old version
Sir Francis Bacon, on behalf of King James. And Sir Francis Bacon was a Templar, and he was also a lawyer, right? And he was also a poet, and he was also, most people think that he was the real pen behind William Shakespeare and all the Shakespearean plays. And so he was a highly talented, and one of the things he loved most was what do they call it? Cryptology, where basically you hide ciphers in your work. So he would write stories like The Tempest and stuff like that, and then he would hide, like, if you take the first capitalized letter of every 4th sentence, I'm just saying, for example, and it spells out a message. Well, he did that with the Bible, the King James 1611. He encoded a lot of esoteric truths into that translation of the Bible. And the reason that this is how it works is because the Bible was written in a symbolic language. Okay. So the Bible was written in a language of symbols. So Hebrew is symbolic, right? Greek is symbolic. They don't have letters. They have symbols, right? So is Latin, right? And so to translate something from a symbolic language into a phonetic language, there has to be a lot of metaphor used and a lot of
changes. Yes, we should not exactly give perfect examples,
right? Because a symbol can mean 1,000 different things, depending on the context in which it's used. It ultimately has one archetypal deep meaning, right? And then like the 6-pointed stars ultimately is a generative symbol. It's the union of the masculine and the feminine. It represents Saturn, because Saturn's considered the bipolar god, right? So, but depending on the various contexts in which it's used, it can mean a myriad of other things, like I said. So that's the trouble with taking a symbolic language and translating it into a phonetic language. There's a lot of stuff hidden in there, but this is where and we might have time to check out that video, because I'm gonna have to shut this down soon. We got a Jurist Society meeting in about a half hour. So
one thing, I don't know if you are aware of it, but if you will get to the interconcordance and you check exactly what word Hebrew exactly means itself, it's referring to Aramaic. Supposedly, New Testament is written in the Hebrew and Aramaic, and 1% Aramaic only, and the Greek. But
that was still a symbolic language, though. So what I'm saying is that the use of like letters where they only represent a sound and not an actual entire concept, which they still do actually represent an entire concept, but that information's been hidden from you, so you don't know how to really read words. And you know what I mean? So the development of this letters making a sound instead of being a symbol is very, very new to our history, which is also another indicator of a possible reset scenario, or maybe the Tower of Babel wasn't as long ago as we're led to believe, and God confused the language.
History is totally a lie, so we can't be sure about anything from the history, to be honest, from my perspective.
So this is where I think they're going with this, though, right? So after the Charlie Kirk thing didn't go as planned, and they can't just roll out all their, AI predictive policing technology, they're going to ratchet up the events, right? And so this is something that just happened recently. And listen to the reasoning and of the investigation that she's going to use, like what the investigators found out about the shooter and all that stuff. And you'll see, you should be able to see where they're heading with this.
Another school shooting that happened yesterday at a high school. So this happened at Evergreen High School in Evergreen, Colorado, which ironically is in Jefferson County, which is the same county as Columbine High School. They have identified the person. So 3 people were injured. 1 person was fatally injured. The person fatally injured was the shooter himself, and this was self-inflicted. 1 student was discharged from the hospital. Another remains in critical condition. And the person responsible has been identified as 16-year-old Desmond Hawley. And this is what spokeswoman Jackie Kelly said in a press conference. But this is all the information that has been released at this point in time about the motive. She said, he's radicalized by some extremist network. And that's literally all she said. She said this is information based on what they've...
Right there. That's it. He's radicalized by some extremist network. We're going to have a whole bunch of these events now, right? These staged events, or maybe they're actually carried out by some MK Ultra sap, right? But
that's possible.
We're going to have an exponentially large increase in these types of events, to the point where it's going to be inundating society with just chaos and trauma. So they can be like, oh, we need to do something about this radical extremism. They're not even going to be specific on what radical extremism is. They always keep that type of thing very vague and general. Whatever they're warring against has to be vague and generalized, so that they can twist it and interpret it however they need to. Like war on crime, like the martial law Trump's implementing to combat crime. Right, it's a war on crime. Well, who gets to determine what crime is? Because right now, a lot of things that police think are crimes are not crimes
at
all.
Yep.
Like traveling. Yeah, exactly. They're the regulation of property under administration, because everyone's estates have been mortgaged. Okay,
because
but what if they consider...
don't know the freaking language? You don't know definitions. That's why, like I said before, they have removed Latin and French from school. French is still there, but mainly Latin they remove it. Because Latin, it's a language of the legality. So the words are based on the Latin mainly. So, of course, there are exceptions. But if people would know Latin still, they would understand and comprehend the definitions of the words and what they really mean. That's why it has been removed and replaced by the English imposed on the whole world, because English is double speak. That's why.
Right. So, like I was saying, they, well, shit, what was I saying now?
There will be a lot of new events. They will speed up. They will put more events.
Yes, a lot of these new events, and the vague and general. So like the war on crime, that's the whole thing. Who gets to determine what crime is, right? Who gets to determine what because we know what a crime actually is. It requires a victim. It's one living soul affects the free will of another living soul in a negative capacity, right? So that's what an actual crime is, but that's not what they call crime today. So Trump's war on crime, where's the line, right? Are you talking about just actual crime, right? And then how do you combat an ideology? How do you combat a concept? Like, where's crime's home base? Just like the war on terror, right? Who are the top generals and colonels of crime, right? Where's crime comes in. Where's crime? Yeah, where's crime based? Yeah, so it's not actually a war on. It's a war on
people,
a straw man, and it's really a war on us. Yeah, it always is. And so that's what we're going to need to combat. We're going to need to wage war against radical extremism, right? So all those people spreading hateful misinformation online and being anti-Septic and being against Trump and MAGA and all that. It's like, and then people automatically assume that because you criticize one side, you're automatically part of another side. I despise Democrats even more than the Republican Party. Okay. The only people out of this entire political paradigm that I halfway like are the Republican people themselves, not the government, not the party. They're the people, because they generally seem to be more traditional, conservative, family-oriented, God-fearing, good people, generally, okay? But they're still brainwashed and stupid for believing that government will fix government. That's why the government is our servant, man. That's why the government is our servant. That's why this country was set up this way. Well, here in the United States, there's enshrined in Supreme Court case, Chisholm v. Georgia, that the government stands in the same relation to the people here as the regents of Europe stand to the kings of Europe. Stand in the same relation. That means you are subject. You are subject to us, right? Our personal property rights Our common law rights are paramount and can never be legislated. Now, the 14th Amendment citizen, on the other hand, is public chattel. The entire nature of that citizenship, when it was created, was for essentially an infantile wardship position, right? So, like, because there's the newly freed slaves who didn't know how to survive on their own. So they were granted privileges and immunities because they couldn't actually exercise their common law rights in a common law capacity because they were dependent. They were like, so they had all their food provided for them, their shelter. And I'm not saying it was obviously a very shitty situation for them. But the point is much like people today, it took away their ability to survive on their own. Right. And I relate it to the people of today because modern day corporations are big tax plantations. And you are nothing more than an indentured servant working on a tax plantation. And truly think about this, guys. Think about this.
We are human resources.
This is how they really
are. We are resource.
This is how they really trapped everyone. Okay. Is they got everybody out of the woods and off the farms and into these cities. And then over successive generations, basically created cookie cutter molds of society for you to roles in society for you to fulfill. So you're going to be a doctor, teacher, lawyer, something like that. But all of these positions are dependent upon a government and a society, right? What teaches you to be independent, right? Farming, hunting, fishing, learning trades, right? Where you can just trade your services for cold hard cash, bypass the IRS. Right. So what have they done? Okay, well, they made you dependent. So if you work at a factory or something, right, or some corporation, or say you work at as a cashier, or say you work even a little bit higher, like a loan officer or something, right, but you're still behind a desk, you work in finance or whatever that stuff. That is not a skill for survival. Okay, so you need these corporations to exist, and these corporations are your enemy, and you need them to exist.
Going deeper than that, because if you take under consideration any country in the world, no country is independent from other countries because exchange, import, export. No country has everything what they need. That's how they did. They freaking make impossible for any country or any man or woman survive on their own unless they have farm. But even with that, there are government obstructions. Like, for example, there is a bird flu, cow flu, or whatever. And they're fucking killing it because they don't belong to you, so they can do whatever they want. That's the problem.
Right, exactly. Well, they mortgage everyone's property rights in every country. We were the ones they piloted it on, and then by making our currency the global reserve currency, everybody else could tie their citizenry to our Federal Reserve Trust Indenture scheme, which was all in preparation for this digital slavery that they're setting up. But what I'm trying to say here, so I can clarify for people in case they don't understand, is they took away your survival skills. That's why they took home ed and wood shop and all that stuff out of schools, right? So that you don't learn how to cook or build or do any of that stuff. They make it look like you're a bum if you do carpentry and stuff like that, when really those people make more money than 90% of people who go to college. And
that's why they call you blue collar worker. It's like a diminishing, which is not
what the job that they have you doing in the factory or wherever you're working is not a skill that you could start your own business doing. And that's the biggest difference. So if your job's to take this piece and put it together with this piece and send it down the line, right? Or if your job is to pack something up in a box and get it ready to be shipped or any of that shit, you can't take that as a skill and be like, okay, I'm going to start a putting plastic pieces together business for people who need this specific piece to be assembled together. No, none of that. So your entire survival, and you're building towards retirement, so you dedicate your life to this tax plantation, dude, right? So, and that's what I'm going to, next stream, what I'm going to do an entire show on equity. The fact how equity is actually a massive scam and trick, right? That basically got put into common practice along with trusts themselves during the building of the feudal system in England, and then spread over here to the United States, right? Via the same mechanism, central bank and the Bar Association, and exactly how to fight back against that. Because That's why they need the AI digital government set up so badly. Okay. Oh, we got Splicer Bears here. Good to see you, man. And hemp-free
That's what I like, solutions. That's what I'm up for.
I love giving solutions, and I have them. I have some solutions. Everything's a fight. That's what people have to understand. There's no silver bullet ever. There's never going to be. And anybody who tries to sell you a silver bullet is a charlatan. I promise
exist.
you.
And
it doesn't exist.
You will struggle, even if you have solution given on silver platter, do this, and that, you will still have problems. You might be jailed, you might be something, might be taken stuff from you. There, because, like you said, there is no golden
when you
solution.
know the law, know the law, the system that they've set up and how they set it up, at least in our country via the 14th Amendment, and what we originally had, right, which we were actually the sovereigns of this republic. We actually had, this was the only country in the world, right, since before William the Conqueror, where a common man could own allodially his land, meaning he had nobody above him that he had to pay or get permission from to do any of that. It's right in Wisconsin State Constitution. Article 1, Section 14 of the original 1848 Wisconsin Constitution says all lands within this state are allodial and feudal tenures are prohibited. That meant once you bought your land, that's what living in the private actually means. Living in the private is when you have access to private property where you are the king of that property, right? Where you have absolute ownership and control. Nobody can tell you what to do or how to use it or anything while you're on your property. That's called living in the private, right? They took that away because the 14th Amendment citizen, by its very nature, is public property. It's public chattel property. That's why the fourth provision of the 14th Amendment says that you're not allowed to question the public debt, because the whole purpose of that amendment was to rope you in as an enfranchisement and then mortgage you to the central banking cartel so they could place all of your property in trust and under administration as part of the receivership of the bankruptcy. That's why Karl Marx said a central bank is absolutely essential to instituting communism, because you have to have a private third-party financial institution to be able to mortgage the citizenry. So real quick, I'm going to explain how this whole corporate structure was created. Okay. So you had the creation and implementation of trusts in the Western world with William the Conqueror, and the implementation of the feudal system where he took all the allodial titles via registration and then gifted them. So he became the supreme controlling interest of all the property in England, then gifted all the lands back out under title, which now allowed him to set conditions on those. And that's how he was able to make his own law, because man cannot make law. They can only regulate the property they own and commerce, or the property under their administration if somebody's incompetent. So they can regulate and create regulations for property of incompetence and infants, right? Common law allows for that. But other than that, man doesn't make law. So you literally have to, and that's not law, by the way, that's just administrative regulations. So William the Conqueror was brilliant. And that's why I think that these people get this knowledge from demons, by getting them to voluntarily give all of their land over to him, right? And then now he can regulate how his property is used. So now he can make laws regarding the use of his property, or something he can enforce under the color of law because it's his property, right? And that's what color of law means. And now when this trust system was created, the rise of equity, or then it was called chancery, came into effect. Okay. And chancery is all left up to the judge's conscience. And really, the judge is acting as a priest. Okay. He's supposed to be like some wise man, some King Solomon sitting up there, right? But the reason it's left up to the conscience of the judge is because he's only supposed to adjudicate property and commerce. He's not supposed to adjudicate living souls. That is reserved for a jury, period. Okay, that's why there's no judge in a common law court case here in the United States. There are only justices of the peace, which are magistrates, and they are trustees of the people. Okay, so that started that rose in prominence, equity, where basically the judge holds the king's conscience, right? And everything increasingly became property disputes, because as trustees, the people were ever more increasingly reduced to property under the administration of the Crown Corporation, right? So let's go, it wasn't the Crown Corporation at that time, but that's what it became. So let's go forward a little bit. The Sovereign District of London, which has always been under the control of Rome, right? Ever since it was founded in the 1st century AD, And it's not part of England at all. That little financial district, it's not part of England at all. It's its own. It's right in the Magna Carta. It tells you it maintains its sovereignty and all its liberties that it's had from time immemorial, right? And it's solidified in the Magna Carta. Well, the merchants in London, right, who ultimately created the Crown Corporation, created these companies like the East India Trading Company, the Virginia Company. And this is in direct relationship to the papal bull Dum Diversus, or the doctrine of discovery, where the Pope basically said, go forth and conquer all the heathen lands and take their shit and bring it back and give me some of it too. That's pretty much what that papal bull is, right? But it's really, oh, we're going to convert the pagans and the heathens and do God's work. And they did some pretty horrible, ungodly things to people. You know, on the same token, a lot of the nations they did slaughter were actually just a bunch of like cannibalistic and human sacrificing type of tribes anyway. So it's hard to know who's the bad guy in a lot of those situations. But ultimately, neither one had any business messing with the other. So in response to this Dum Diversus, where the Pope said, go forth and conquer the lands, these companies were created by merchants out of the sovereign district of London, like the East India Trading Company, Virginia Company, Hudson Bay Company. These eventually became the companies that form our governments. Okay, like the United States is a company. It always has been, ever since it was first established. And originally it was the East India Trading Company, right? So that's why, if you guys look at the East India Trading Company flag, let me show you guys something real quick. Check this out. Just going to show you this real fast. So we'll go East India Trading Company flag. Yep, there. It's already in my recent searches. Right there it is. Right there. That's the East India Trading Company flag. Okay. So they ended up becoming the colonial governments, and then the actual, and then the governments of the nations that came. And Canada has always been owned by the United States, by the way. I'll go into that next time I'm on too. But so the East India Trading Company became the United States. The Hudson Bay Company became Canada. Now, the purpose of the creation of these companies and the rise of trusts, both things are were connected. The rise of trusts, the rise of banking systems, and the rise of these companies, because they were to go forth, settle, of course, bring back all the materials which help industrialize England, get people off the farms and out of the forests and get them civilized and in the cities and dependent on one another, with all these new booming businesses coming from our colonization and all the raw materials we're getting able to send back, right? But eventually the plan was to build up these areas, turn them into sovereign nations, and then the Bar Association, working in tandem with the banks, needed to draw the entire citizenry of every one of these companies under the company. So see, the people of the states were separate from the United States Corporation or the United States Company. The United States Company had no jurisdictional authority, has nothing to do with people of the states. And that's the degrees of separation that were set up by the wiser founding fathers to make sure that what's happened today could not happen. So that's why the Civil War happened. That's why we had the 14th Amendment was ratified at gunpoint, literally over, it needed 3/4 of a majority vote to be ratified. And over 16 out of 37 states rejected it, including a lot of northern states like New Jersey, Ohio, I'm pretty sure, but Maryland, right? They rejected the 14th Amendment. So then they went and sent the military down into those state governments and held them at gunpoint. So now you're gonna ratify this. The reason they needed to do that was because now they could bring everybody under the United States Corporation. Okay, they can centralize the borrowing power and centralize the collateral to one entity, the United States Corporation, which has always been foreign to every state in this republic and still is. It's a foreign corporation. So once they get all the citizenry under the corporation as enfranchisements, like we did through the 14th Amendment, then the central bank works in tandem with the Bar Association to balloon the debt system to the point where they can bankrupt that company. Now, that company, the only assets that it actually has is its public chattel, its enfranchisements. So then, once the company was bankrupted, it has to reorganize, continue its existence, for it shall not fail, right? Trust shall not fail. And then it had to mortgage its citizenry to the central banking system, which allows them to effectively turn everyone into a mere trustee and chattel property of their own estates, place them under administration, and tie all their registrable property to the public charitable trust, which in our country is called Social Security, and then generate infinite amounts of revenue using us as the security to create commercial paper and debt obligations. And that's what they're doing. And it's not even about the money at this point. It is literally the most ingenious system of control ever conceived of, because they can tell you how to use your property, because it's not yours. You just have the right to use it, because it's actually been put in trust as collateral. As soon as you registered it, it becomes part of the public trust and it's used as collateral. That's why everything's tied to your Social Security number. So I'm going to go into this stuff definitely a lot more next time, because I've been kind of getting off in the woods with this Kirk and all the psyop-y stuff that's been going on. But this channel really is about the law and how to break free from their equity trust indenture system. So
yeah, I want to drop one more connection in a matter of judge in a black robe, the same, like you said, as a priest, the same as Jews having their square boxes on the heads, the same as Muslims have Kaaba, they holy place, and they are squaring the circle because that's a square and they're going in circles. So it's all related to the Satan.
Yep.
That's how the system works, because Satan, small g, is God of this earth. That's how it is. That's how deep it goes. That's why when someone doesn't believe in God, he has been freaking brainwashed. He's stupid as rock.
It does all come back to Saturn. It's the red and blue lights on the cop that the cops have on their cars. In fact, everything about the cops' symbolism of the badge and all that stuff, it's all Saturnian. Yeah, 100%. Yep, Saturn is the ancient cult of this world, the dark sacrificial cult.
That's why Christ said, you builders, you didn't put me as your cornerstone, because builders are masons. They were building the society. Builders, masons, you didn't put me as a cornerstone. Cornerstone, as we know, is always on the building. And you probably have seen that. You've seen the markings in the buildings, in the masonic buildings. You have a kind of compass on the flag or on the floor, on the ceiling, on the wall. And if you put real compass next to the sign of compass, you will see that north is not on the north. So that's what it is, because the north is Lucifer, Satan.
Well, and the beginning, the building of a series of interlocking trust relationships via contract and debt is how they build. That's how they build society, right? Because that's what society is today, is a series of interlocking trust relationships that build on top of one another in a system of codependency where everyone needs everyone else, right? And all of us need the corporate state, or that's at least they think, and that's what they want. And that was done through debt and contract. It's building of a series of interlocking trust relationships. Like, okay, we're going to assess your property for property taxes now that it's being used as collateral for the public debt, and you are only a tenant on your land, but we will hire these thugs in uniform and tell you they're there to protect you, and then say that's why you pay property taxes, right? And or other municipal services like firefighters and EMS, which are all private contractors anyway, right? So that's the whole thing. The system is a series of interlocking trust relationships and offices.
Yes. That's why we have to have licenses. Like, for example, if you want to go and hunt, you have to have a hunting license, because then you won't be able to feed your family, because you have to have a license. And you have a license, government can tell you you cannot hunt anymore.
See, and what I try to get people to understand is the only way they were able to institute statutes like that, demanding that you pay the government for permission, or demanding that you register your biological property, or demanding any of that stuff. The only way they could do that is by reducing, in this country, I don't know about yours, but definitely I know and can prove in this country, the only way that Congress could do that and the president could do that is by turning you into a federal enfranchisement via the 14th Amendment, okay, which reduces you to an indentured trustee under administration. So you exchange your autonomy and sovereignty for privileges and immunities when you sign up for the 14th as a United States citizen. That's what happens. So, and it's a subclass of citizenship. I can show you guys case after case. I'll actually just show you one to give you a little preview of what I'm talking about here. Let me pull up this other. But they tell you in these court cases, if you know where to look. Fortunately, I definitely know where to look and have spent a lot of time learning and sharing this stuff with you guys. But this is Maxwell v. Dow. Okay, check this out. Maxwell v. Dow. Well, that's going to pop up first is actually a treatise on the American law of administration. But Maxwell v. Dow is right here. And this tells you the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal constitution against the powers of the federal government, because 14th Amendment citizens or United States citizens that are granted privileges and immunities they don't have common law rights. They have privileges and immunities. So the Bill of Rights doesn't mean shit when it comes to them. The only portion of the Constitution that applies to the United States citizen is the 14th Amendment, which I like to call the 14th Amendment contractual black hole, because that's what it is. It's a one contract you enter into that gives them essentially power of attorney over you to enter you into ad infinitum number of extra contracts afterwards. Like, say, by acting as proxy settlers of your estate when they mortgage it to the central banking cartel. Right, so that's one example. We have, let's see here. We got this Long v. Rasmussen, which tells you that Congress has nothing to do with the people of the states. Tells you and this opinion's written by a bar pirate. So note that he's very careful not to say state citizen or federal citizen. He says taxpayers and non-taxpayers. He says the revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers. The latter, meaning non-taxpayers or non-federal citizens, right? The latter are without their scope. No procedure, means without their jurisdiction, right? They cannot create a procedure. It says no procedure is prescribed for non-taxpayers and no attempt is made to annul any of their rights and remedies in the due course of law. With them, Congress does not assume to deal, and they are neither of the subject nor of the object of the revenue laws. Okay,
that's why at this point I would like to interject. Sorry, and that's why it's very important to know. Probably a lot of people here know on the channel that you can reject paying taxes. It's in the legality system, so you can refuse it and remove your consent. And then you are becoming taxpayer. That's why it's very important.
Yeah, we got a whole system for doing that in the Jurist Society. So this one is one employed. That's what a driver is. Driver's commercial. But I'm going to show you the definition of 14th Amendment in Black's Law Dictionary. And then I'm going to show you another case, and then I got to shut this down and get over to
look
the
as well
Jurist
in the
Society.
Dictionary, 14th Amendment. I never did it, but it might be beneficial for you because there might be slightly differences.
It's not going to be, because this one says exactly what it is perfectly. I don't need another dictionary's definition of it, because this one tells you and distinguishes it from the state citizenship, right?
Yeah,
so,
but you know they are very tricky.
Much.
So if they want to use it against you, they can go by the second definition. That's why it's good to know, because usually
no other. Okay.
And
have you ever seen this definition I'm about to show you? Don't confuse people. Let me show them this. I'll show you this, and then it'll make more sense of why I say this definition works just fine. Okay, so it's very fucking annoying getting down to it. Here it is, 14th Amendment. Let's zoom in and go over. So it says it became part of the organic law July 28, 1868, and its importance entitles it to special mention. It creates, or at least recognizes for the first time, a citizenship of the United States as distinct from that of the states. That's all you need. That's it. That's the only definition, right? See, what they did with later editions is they took that out. And they just say, oh, it became part of the amendment. And it secures the civil rights of newly freed slaves and dumb shit, which is not incorrect, but they don't have rights. They have privileges, immunities. And they had to obfuscate this situation to make people believe that that United States citizenship is the only citizenship that exists. That's what they had to do. And I have this, let's see here, this last case I'll leave you guys with just to kind of emphasize how this is the linchpin. As soon as I can find it, it is, I guess I'm just going to have to look it up. Somehow I must have closed it, but that's okay. We can do that. So it's McDonnell v. State. And this is from the Indiana Supreme Court, 1883, just after the 14th Amendment was issued. Okay, you come down here, you read, this guy tried to appeal his conviction because he said one of the jury members was an alien. He wasn't a United States citizen. And it turns out that though he did move from Germany, he naturalized with the state. And so he was a state citizen, and you don't have to be a United States citizen. This encapsulates it right here. It says this. It says the evidence of bushing, that's the juror, on his voir dire, which is the competency for a juror, showed that although he was not a citizen of the United States, he was a citizen and voter of the state. Under Section 2 of Article 2 of our state constitution, one may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. Boom. That's simple. Okay. Now, the United States is a foreign jurisdiction, a foreign corporation. That's why originally we had caged it in with boundary stones. Wonder how many of you know that. So jurisdiction, look, there's these boundary stones, the 10 square miles, right? All the way around. And one side says jurisdiction of the United States. The other side just says Maryland, because that's when you're going back to common law. All the states are under the same jurisdiction, common law, and they have reciprocity, right? So what's acceptable in one state is acceptable in another. And that because they couldn't legislate against your property rights when you were people of the state. But under the 14th Amendment, you're public chattel. It's a completely different standing. And that's what we're going to get into next. Now, here's another thing that's pretty interesting too. UCC 9-307, location of debtor. This is Uniform Commercial Code. You go down to subsection H of 9-307, and it says location of the United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. No shit.
Mm-hmm. I know this.
Yeah. That's why you're a resident of your state. Resident is short for resident alien. And that's why you're under essentially administrative control of the Federal Reserve System, is because you're actually under federal jurisdiction. This entire counterfeit system that they overlaid on top of our original system is all done through admiralty, maritime law, right? And federal jurisdiction. They brought the Sea of Commerce inland via trusts, actually, and the mortgage of your estate. So with that, I have to get over to the Jurist Society. I am 3 minutes late. As always, Janusz, I appreciate you coming up. And
no worries.
The next show I'll be doing will be on the trap of equity and how that's playing into this digital beast system, because I really need people to see how this has been a long, steadily trotting forward of a plan, right, to implement this, going back pretty much since the beginning of time, but definitely since William the Conqueror. This is all just steadily moved in the same direction towards this beast system. That's another reason why I think that it's happened. It happens. It happened before. I think it's a cycle, but that's just me. I can't prove that.
Yeah,
I can prove. Yeah, I can prove how that all this has worked together to bring us where we are today as an intentional progressive plan. The rise of trusts, the creation of companies.
Well, if you listen to the archaics, Jason Brashear, he says that there is a cycle on Earth, and they supposedly know that some kind of catastrophe or whatever change is coming to Earth, and they are always using that for their own benefit. So it's called Phoenix event, like what you have now in your background. So if you look into Jason Brashear and his channel, he will be speaking about the Phoenix event, look into it, and the years. That makes a lot of sense. I don't know if it's true, but it looks legit, like what he's talking about.
I've heard variations of that same theory, but yeah, ultimately, I feel like this isn't the first time this has happened. And I think that it's something they keep trying to get right every single time. And that's why there's evidence of resets and stuff. But what I can prove to you, that's just my theory. What I can prove to you is how this entire system, like how the papacy, the bar association, the small hats, and the bank, through the banking system. So you've got the small hats in the church, the small hats in the banking system, and the small hats in the bar association.
The question is how we can destroy it.
All working in tandem.
Yeah.
For like the last 1,000 years to erect this massive trust indenture system administratively governed by corporations, which are lifeless. It's the beast. It's the Leviathan.
How small group of people could destroy the system? That's the big question. I was always wondering about the answer to this question. Because, okay, compliance across Earth would work, but of course, people are brainwashed, so they wouldn't go with it because they wouldn't trust it. So
the answer to that
small group can do it. Mm-hmm.
The simple answer to that, of course, because I've got to go, but a simple answer to that is you have to learn the law. You have to learn what they've done so that they can't use it on you anymore. And when we get enough people that know how to, what I call lawfully not comply, right? Lawful non-compliance. Once we get a large enough group of people that are able to do that, then it'll spread like wildfire, right? But you have to learn how are they able to tell you how to use your property? How are they able to tell you how short your grass needs to be and how fast you can drive or, operate and drive or commercial, but how fast you can travel in your own personal property? How do they get to regulate that? Well, there's a specific way because man cannot make law and just arbitrarily enforce his rules against other men without consent or some sort of arrangement. So they specifically had to go through and set up this massive neo-feudal system through debt contracts and trust arrangements, right? In order to place all of your property into a trust and then place it under administrative corporations for regulation. It's right here. This is the last thing I'll show you guys because I got to go. There's this damn law review. Okay, it's called Fiduciary Foundations of Administrative Law, and it's written by Evan J. Criddle. It's a UCLA law review, and he tells you that's exactly how they set it up. He says the emerging fiduciary model, which a fiduciary is a trustee that can make financial, decisions for a trust. The fiduciary model in administrative law, administrate always means to administer, or administration always has to do with trusts. Okay, it's always the regulation of trust property. So the fiduciary model in administrative law posits that administrative agencies, what are those? Well, that's the DMV, the EPA, the IRS, right? They're not actually government agencies. They use the authority of government, but they're not government agencies. They're administrative corporations, okay? They're endowed with authority to set regulatory policy. Well, what's regulatory policy? Well, that's telling you how to use your property, okay? That's like the motor vehicle code. So they are endowed with authority to set regulatory policy when Congress and the president acting jointly as proxy settlers for the sovereign people. Okay, now that's something I'll have to translate for you guys. Acting jointly as proxy means on behalf of someone else. Acting as proxy settlers. Now, what settlement means? Settlement, this is important right here, what settlement means, okay? Because we go to Bouvier's Law Dictionary. The word settlement, when it comes to the term it's being used there, like contracts, says the conveyance of an estate for the benefit of some person or persons. So what this literally means right here in 1933 says the money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it's backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. That's where Congress and the president mortgaged your property rights. That's what is meant by proxy settler for the sovereign people. Proxy settler. They did this on your behalf because you're an infant under wardship and administration. And that allowed them to create a public charitable trust to tie all your registrable property to. and then use it to create debt obligations when you don't use your property the way that they tell you to. That's how they did this. So you have to learn how they did it so that when they try to apply it to you, know why they did it, know why they're not allowed to do it. You can be the biggest pain in their ass they've ever met. Do not let them acquire jurisdiction. So with that, I've got to get out of here. As always, Janusz, thank you very much for coming up. If anything you want to say to people. Huh?
Thank you for having me. Always glad speaking with you.
Of course. Always good speaking with you as well, Janusz. Yep. So I'm going to head over to the Jurist Society. So Jurist Society members, if you're like, yeah, we're supposed to start 10 minutes ago. I'm well aware. I'm heading over there now. To everyone else, you have a great evening. Oh, no, you're good, man. It's only an extra 10 minutes. Not a big deal. So, yeah, everyone else have an excellent evening, and I'll probably see you either tomorrow or the day after. So we'll get back into that equity stuff, and I'll give you guys the stuff you need
as well. I'm waking up in 4 hours. So, yeah. So good night, everyone, and Godspeed.
It sucks, dude. 4 hours of sleep.
I usually sleep like 3-4 hours, and I'm an old guy, so I don't really need a lot of sleep.
That's fair enough. You guys have an excellent evening. You try to get some sleep, Janusz, and I'll see you guys next time.
Good night.